Hi everybody. My name's Tom White. Can you hear me? Okay. I work for Cloudera. And yeah, today I'm going to talk about the Apache Hadoop 21 release that we're working on at the moment. Quick background about me: I've been a Hadoop committer since 2007. I'm also the author of the O'Reilly Hadoop book. By the way, I'm working on the second edition at the moment, so that should be out later this year sometime. That's lots of text. I wanted to start by pointing out this quotation, which is by Brian Cantrell in the what's called Q magazine, the ACM Q magazine, and he was talking about Solaris and about what they called the quality death spiral. And basically, without reading all of that, he was making the point that developers were using their own little bits on their desktop or server, so they weren't using code that was common. So no one was kind of exercising the common code in any way. So we're kind of seeing this in Hadoop a little bit at the moment. Different organizations are running patched versions of Hadoop, and you know that could be a problem. So what we want to do is have a release to move forward from that. This is a graph of the releases over time, and if you look over here, you can see that, so 14, 15, 16, the releases were every 3 months. More recently, they've slowed down to every 6 months, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but what is a bad thing is that that dot at the top there is the 21 branch point. So that was when the first 21 branch was created in September of last year. And unfortunately, that has not turned into a release. So the plan is to do a 21 release from trunk. So actually, we've done a new branch from trunk at the end of last month, actually, and that's what's going to form the basis of the release now. The other thing to note is that earlier in Hadoop's history, like 16, had lots of point releases in quick succession. And that was fixing bugs. So that was a very kind of responsive way of working. When, you know, after the first .0 release, there was another release just weeks later. And if you look at the 20 release, that wasn't the case. There was a big gap between the dot release, which is often an alpha quality release, and the next release, the 20.1 release, which is in October 2009. So the question is, how do we make it easy for people to upgrade? And the real answer is to make the compatibility story very straightforward for users. So one of the things that we've been focusing on for this release is source compatibility. And this builds on a lot of the work done by Sanjay Radia at Yahoo. He's actually written a blog post about it, which appeared on the Yahoo Developer Network today. I haven't got a URL in here, but if you go to the blog, you'll see that. And he explains in the article all these different annotations in more detail. But very briefly, there are two types of annotation. There's an audience annotation and a stability annotation. Audience says who can use different interfaces. So regular users, those writing MapReduce jobs, can use the public APIs that are marked public. The private APIs are for different audiences. So private means that it's project private, so it can only be used within the project. So if it's in Hadoop Common, it's only used within that project itself. Whereas limited private actually specifies who can use that interface. So an interface in Hadoop Common that says that Hadoop MapReduce can use it can only be used within Common and MapReduce. And the important thing is that Javadoc, so user Javadoc will only show the public interfaces. So any private internal implementations will not appear in the Javadoc, which is an important feature. The other axis is stability. And what we've done is gone through all of the code in Common and MapReduce and marked them as, we've gone through and marked them with the audience and the annotations. For example, the old MapReduce APIs are considered stable, so we mark those as stable. There are some public classes that are actually unstable because they're experimental, and that means that they can change from one release to the next, even a point release, without guaranteeing any backwards compatibility. A stable release has to be compatible between major releases, whereas evolving can change between minor releases. And the other tool we've used is JDiff, which is a tool for doing a diff between two APIs. And we've modified JDiff so that it can take these annotations into account. So if it's comparing to minor releases, it will ignore the evolving annotation. This is what the Javadoc looks like. You can see that it's public evolving. It's marked on at the top level of the class Javadoc there. So a little bit about the process that we're going to go through to make this release. As I said before, we've already created a new 21 branch. The old one is still there, but effectively sidelined. There are 3 blocker lists for common HTTPS and MapReduce at those URLs. And what we're doing at the moment is working through those blockers to close them out. And thank you for anyone who's actually working on those blockers. Part of the challenge of this release is the fact that the project, so the core project, is split into 3 pieces now. In 20, you just get one artifact, one tarball, whereas because at the time of the 20 release there was only one project called core. Now there are 3 projects: common, HTTPS, and MapReduce. So there's a bit of work to figure out how to create those artifacts. Things like, where do the bin scripts go? Where do the conf files go? They get spread across the different artifacts. So some of the blockers actually are to do with fixing those things. The other blockers are compatibility, things I was talking about. And there are some other blockers as well to do with just regular bugs, actually. So once we've fixed those blockers and worked out how to build the releases, we can do some testing. And this is an area where there's going to be a slight deviation from what's gone on before, I think. I've created a wiki page, and several organisations have offered to help with the testing. So the proposal is to do the testing and record the results of the testing openly on that wiki page. And that will help the community kind of judge, or not the community, users judge whether they want to use these releases. And then there's just a regular vote and release cycle that happens at Apache. I also envisage bug fix releases in fairly quick succession after the initial .0 release. So how can you help out? Fixing blockers is one way. We're about 30 blockers at the moment. I think that will come down substantially in the next few weeks. The other areas where people can help out is by trying to compile the code, your own user code, against the 21 release candidates. I was talking about compatibility. That's one of the major themes of the release. So if you compile and see that the API has changed in some way and it's not documented as being changed, then that would be great feedback to have. Also, trying out the release candidates and the releases on test clusters would be very useful and much appreciated if you can report that publicly as well. That would be appreciated. And the final caveat is that we don't think 21 should be used for production, and that's for several reasons. It's a .0 release, so traditionally those are not suitable for production. Bear in mind it's been a year since 20.0 came out, so all of that work has happened in trunk, and there's been a lot of new features have been added. Will be available in that toggle, and so there's a lot of kind of uncertainty from that point of view. So that kind of brings me to my final slide, which is what is in this release. I treated this at the end. I put this right at the end. This is just a small sample. As I said, it's been a year of development, a very busy project, very popular project with many contributors. These are just a few highlights. The new MapReduce API actually is already available. However, it's not complete in 20. So you'll find areas where you can't use it because the library support isn't there. So I'm thinking of things like multiple outputs and multiple inputs aren't supported properly in 20 in the new API. So that's what I mean by comprehensive there. The other major piece of work is the Symlinks API. There's a new file system API called File Context. However, that's not integrated with MapReduce, so you can't write out Symlinks or something. There's also the new shuffle code, which is much more efficient than previous release. And then there are hundreds of other improvements which I haven't listed, so you can look at the changes.txt for details on those. One thing that's not in it is the security work that Yahoo has been working on. Some of it is in, but it's not all of it is into trunk yet. So we decided to push forward with the 21 release before all that was in, because we thought that waiting any longer was not necessarily a good thing to do. However, at the end of the year, we expect a 22 release, and that will have security in it. So that's actually new. O&M Alley is going to be rolling that release. And yeah, that's it. Are there any questions?
Are there any tools checking my code towards these annotations in the APIs? Or are you using some tools?
The question is, are there any tools for checking code against the annotations? The answer is no, there aren't any tools at the moment. But I think that would be an excellent addition. But I think there might be a couple of Jiras out for doing that. I did have a quick look at that, and there is a Maven called a Mojo or something that can support that kind of thing, where you say you look for particular annotations in code you're compiling, and if you find them, the code that you're compiling against, and if you find them, then you can issue warnings. That's the kind of behaviour you want.